Welcome to Deeper with Darshana, where we skip the small talk and dive down into what's raw and real. Pleasure, shame, justice, power, healing, liberation. These essential aspects of our human experience are among my favorite topics to explore, and I'm inviting you to join me. I'm your host, Darshana Avila, somatic sex and trauma expert and creator of the Erotic Wholeness Method. It is my belief that we are erotic by nature, and our erotic nature encompasses so much more than you might realize. Come along as I drop into curious conversations with other passionate pros and sensual seekers, and occasionally share musings of my own. Bring your curiosity, your sacred, messy, beautiful humanity, and all the parts of yourself. And let's go deeper together. If you have a hard time discerning what it is that gives you pleasure and what you want in an intimate context, or if you say that you prefer to be the giver but have a hard time receiving, today's episode is for you. We are getting introduced to the Wheel of Consent, which is a body of work that I cannot say enough good things about. It is the foundation of erotic wholeness in so many ways and how I guide my clients. And today I'm talking with Betty Martin, who created this beautiful body of work, as well as Marcia Baczynski, who is one of the legacy carriers who facilitates all over the world, training practitioners, training individuals to be able to understand consent in a more nuanced, embodied way that helps us to feel a far greater sense of personal power and agency, and also opens up the door to exponentially more pleasure in your partnered intimacy. You're gonna love this one, so please enjoy, and I will see you on the other side. Welcome back to Deeper with Darshana, everyone. Today you're in for a treat. I am here with Betty Martin and Marcia Baczynski, who each have their own beautiful bodies of work and perspectives, and today we're going to talk about what we all have in common, which is the Wheel of Consent, the bedrock of so much of the work that I know I do with my clients, and I watch people's minds get blown on a daily basis. And it is Betty's baby.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny, as I was getting ready for this conversation with both of you, it occurred to me, it's like, I have a way that I describe Betty to all of my clients because I want to make sure I hope I've been saying that correctly for the last decade. Check your bio.
Okay. And it probably won't
Keep
matter.
But by way of diving in, Betty, can you give a little narrative of how it is that you came to develop the Wheel of Consent, and maybe a little bit about what it actually is for those who might not be familiar?
Well, I want to hear you do that.
Oh, okay. So here's my
Yeah, let's hear how you do it.
But I'm always like, Betty is this incredible woman who's a chiropractor and a sex worker and a mother, and she's just got all this dynamic history and had her hands on so many bodies and put this incredible body of work together. And I just hype you up and people get excited. But I think it's the sex worker, chiropractor, mother. It's kind of our brains are stretching for a lot of us to figure out how do all those things together, which maybe that's the conversation starter. I know that I'm going to take the liberty of saying, I know that we are three incredibly sex positive females who really do believe that your sexuality and your erotic expression need not be tamped down, limited, shaped only by those other roles. And yet we also probably all agree that that's not how most people are oriented and acculturated. So I think it's really quite something that you hold those titles as it were, and have put them all together in this beautiful way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was a chiropractor for about 30 years. And at some point towards the end of that, I began a journey of erotic exploring for my own purposes, not having anything to do with anybody else. Took some workshops and practiced with some other people who had taken similar workshops, and just really did a lot of exploring for some number of years. And And I don't mean like, getting laid by everybody I could. I did that in my 20s, but in my 40s, um, exploring what does it mean for me? What is Eros for me? What is my body capable of? What happens in my feelings when I do this? What happens when I feel this? That kind of exploring. And out of that grew a desire to offer what I had learned to other people. So I closed my chiropractic office. I moved to the city, which was Seattle, opened a different studio, and started working as a sacred intimate or a sacred whore, as you might say, or a sex coach, meaning I was doing experiential work with clients to help them learn basically how to be comfortable in their skin and how to be comfortable in their own eros and in their own arousal and how to be in aroused states and still be able to function. And just using eros as a self-exploration experience.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
that's where the wheel of consent came from.
Skin, like
What? Yeah. And I learned a lot by working with people because I learned, for one thing, that most people are not comfortable in their skin.
Mhm.
And so that was a big part of working with people with sexuality. And I discovered that for most people, the sex isn't the problem. The being in your skin is the problem.
Mhm.
And once you learn how to be in your skin, the sex that can come much more easily. But being uncomfortable in your body and not knowing what you want and what you don't want and how to communicate that and all those things felt so normal to people that they just thought that's the way it was. And then when they were in a sexual situation, then that stuff all came up. So they thought it was about sex, but it really wasn't about sex.
That is such a valuable distinction, that this kind of underlying issue of not being at home and at ease in your body, of not being clear in what you want, isn't necessarily limited to sex alone.
Oh, no, not at all.
Highlight.
Yeah.
Marcia, I want to toss this over to you. Like, why? Big giant why is it that most people just don't have a clue what they really like and want? Never mind the how to communicate about it. Like we got to, all before we can run, right? So it's like, what is the source of that disconnect as best you understand it? Because I know you work a lot around that.
I do. Yeah. No, I think that, I think there's a few different sources of it, right? I think one is that, from the time we're little, we're told to sit down and be quiet and raise your hand if you have to go to the bathroom, and to, don't cry, and I'll give you something to cry about. And, just other people tell us how to feel a lot when we're little. Many of us have had uncomfortable experiences, whether they were malicious and abusive or just like awkward and, clueless, from a really young age, about being touched in ways we didn't like, having things done to us that we didn't like, and not really having a place to talk to anybody about it, or being able to bring it up, or being shut down when we do try to bring it up. And that's true, again, in an abusive context, but also in a non-abusive context is very common. And I think that our culture also our culture as a whole is very skeptical of the body, of nature, of things that are truly wild, of, we really like things to be tight and controlled and managed. And when things are tight, controlled, and managed and efficient, then, you can be very good at extracting and exploiting, but you're not very good at feeling and noticing. So I think it makes it really challenging to, like Betty said, it comes up in sex, but it's once you start to see it, you kind of start to see how it permeates everything. And, I grew up as an athlete, and I also then co-founded Cuddle Party. And so I was kind of in these fields where I didn't really even think of it as embodiment, because even the concept of embodiment was still very much tied to sex for me, or later to trauma therapy. And I'm like, oh, actually, no, like there's all these things, dancing and moving and things that people can do for the joy of it. And you're kind of taught, oh, well, you know, you better be good at the thing you're doing. And that's another form of not being in touch with this stuff. So we're taught to optimize, we're taught to be efficient, we're taught to override in so many contexts long before we ever even get to the bedroom. And then it shows up in the bedroom in spades.
Right. So we just assume that that's the root of the issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does the wheel of consent help us to start unraveling, if that's the right word here, exploring? I mean, I'd love, if you're explaining to someone who's never even heard of it before.
Yeah. So what the wheel of consent does, and I think does really helpfully, first of all, it's a set of practices. It's not just one practice, but it's a practice. So it's something that we're doing over and over and over again so that we get to notice what comes up. So that's useful. It's not just like a single thing you learn. And then from those practices, what we're doing is we're taking apart who's doing what and who it's for. So just because I'm like touching a person, or even for that matter, touching an object, doesn't mean it's for the other person or for the object. I can touch it for my benefit. And so the process of taking apart who's doing what and who it's for, so that those are not collapsed together, that starts to make room to notice, like, oh, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. Ooh, I think I like this. Ooh, I'm having big feelings about liking this. I'm having big feelings about not liking it. I'm having feelings about things that have nothing to do with liking. And that whole process, and having worked with several thousand people with it at this point, of seeing people start to realize that they can touch another person for their benefit or touch another person for my own benefit, that I get to do both, that those are two distinctly different things, changes so much. It changes, yes, it absolutely changes sex. It also changes when I'm at getting a massage. It changes how I think about going out to a meal, or how I go out with my friends, or how I make plans with people, because I now have an understanding of, is this for me or is this for you? Who's this for? Is it for anybody? Or are we just doing things because we got momentum on it?
Oh, there we go. Or out
right?
of habit.
Out of habit. Or because somebody suggested it 2 weeks ago and now the calendar date has come up, even though neither of us want to do that thing anymore, but we're just doing it because we said we would. Or doing it because somebody suggested it as an option, and then the other person, yeah, we could do that. Now we're doing a bunch of things we could do that nobody wants to do.
I'm having a moment with that one. Like, I feel fairly empowered when it comes to my sex and intimacy, but with my social plans, oh my God, this was on the calendar, so therefore I must stay committed, which basically means, and Marcia, you know this about me, like, I just don't commit to a whole lot because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to feel in 3 days, in 3 hours, 3 weeks. It's like,
Yeah. So I think the wheel really does a wonderful job of taking those things apart. And then the other thing I think it does a really wonderful job that has huge implications for sex, but also for the rest of your life, is when you practice the practices over and over again, you really start to understand, oh, this is mine and that is not mine. You start to understand what we call what's in your domain and what's not in your domain. And that, noticing like, oh, this is what I have a responsibility for, and this is what I have a right to. And, oh, I actually am not responsible for that. And, ooh, maybe I didn't have a right to that. And I was kind of taking that right anyway, in terms of like touch or time or energy or attention. That clarity also really starts to make it a lot clearer. And my work, you know, I used to work with couples a lot. And in the last 15 years, I've really moved almost exclusively to individuals, because so often in a couple dynamic, people talk about the we want this. I'm like, no, there isn't a we that wants it.
We can't want.
We can't want. I want and you want, and maybe those are sometimes the same thing.
Yeah.
But getting that differentiation of, wait, this is mine, that's yours. We are ideally having some significant overlap, but that doesn't mean that it's the same want. That starts to make it possible to see, oh, maybe we want the same activities, but for different reasons. Or maybe we have the same reasons, but we land on different activities. Or maybe I didn't even understand this deeper thing about you. And it clarifies so much around desire, around boundaries, around limits. It's so I love that part of the wheel.
I'm wondering if we can give like an example when you're talking about domain, like what is and is not ours to impact or to be responsible for. Maybe we're in like the shadow of that. Can you just narrate, in either one of you really, an example so that if someone's listening, like what does it mean to be in or out of your domain in this context?
Betty, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Oh, I think of domain, a lot of people talk about boundaries. And what I notice when talking about boundaries is that people mean very different things when they say that word. And so if you're arguing about boundaries, chances are you mean something entirely different when you're saying it. And I have a friend who has a wolf sanctuary, and she had different families of wolves in chain link enclosures, big ones. And the wolves, one family of wolves could see another family and smell another family, but they were perfectly fine because there was a fence there. And she was saying, yeah, each family, they take their territorial, of course, which means that they take responsibility for their territory. Oh, that's interesting. And they are also, they don't want anybody in their territory. So they guard their territory. And I started thinking, well, that's, kind of like me, like these things I am responsible for, and these things I am not responsible for, and these things I have a right to, and these things you have a right to those things, I don't, so I think of things like my body, my thoughts, my feelings, my dreams, my fears, my choices, what I'm a no to, what I'm a yes to. All those things are my responsibility, and they're also my right. It doesn't mean that my right can't be usurped. Of course it can, but ideally I have a right to it. So body is a pretty obvious example. I have a right to my body. You don't get to do things to me that I don't agree to. And I'm also responsible for my body. It's my job to take care of it. It's my job to say, no, you can't do this, or yes, you can do this, or will you do this? It's not your job to read my mind about it. It's my job to notice what it is and speak it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That comes up a lot for me as a practitioner when once I've taken a client through Foundations of the Wheel of Consent and they have the vocabulary, and I also give them a menu of touch so that we have shared language about what's going to happen before we go into a bossy massage, which the bossy massage is another gem of Betty's, to where the person who is actually receiving the touch is in the role of accepting, and I as the practitioner am serving them by giving them what they ask for. And whether it's in that process or anywhere that we go deeper and beyond, something that comes up all the time with clients, and it does not seem to matter how far ahead of this I try to get. Is that, Darshana, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Like, is this okay with you? Am I taking too long? And I mean, the taking too long is not even about like their arc of arousal. It could be anything.
Right.
And so I'm regularly and continually impressing upon clients that I am my responsibility in that dynamic. So it's on me to be my advocate. If I am tired, if you're asking me to dig in with my thumbs and I feel like my thumbs are about to fall off, like I've got to take care of me. And that example shows so much, because if they're doing that with me, someone who they're paying good money to be available to them, imagine how that dynamic plays out then in interpersonal relating and in intimacy, because we're constantly, and I say we, I'm going to define that we not exclusively, but certainly heavily, those like us who are born into female bodies, acculturated women, you know, like we got a lot of that messaging of like, I've got to take responsibility for everybody else.
Yeah.
I know Marcia does a lot of helping us recover from that shadow of the good girl. But yeah, it's like, you know, it seems benevolent on the surface to care about the other person's comfort, well-being, but there's a real shadow there that the wheel of consent helps us to understand. I'm curious to hear either one of you expound on that a little more, because I think it's a very common place where people are struggling.
Yeah. And of course you want to care about your partner. I hope you do. This is not to say, you know, don't care. But in the practice of the wheel, and you're playing the 3-minute game, which you can link to, and you know, how do you want me to touch you? How do you want to touch me? And you're having a little conversation before you engage in the touch. You're learning gradually to like Marcia said, to distinguish who it's for and who it's about. This is for me. This is for you. Yeah.
And what I notice is that it's often presented as caring, and it often is, but it is also a way to bounce out of the vulnerability of it being for you. Like when your client is saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
A lot of times what they're actually saying is, "Am I too much? Am I too much? Am I too much? Am I too much for me? Am I safe here? Am I okay with myself experiencing this really vulnerable desire that I have, which might just be like, will you put your hands on my back or my feet or my arm? It might not be." Often the more simple it is, often the more vulnerable it is.
Right. And we're also bumping up in that instance for some people, especially when there is a more complex trauma history of simply a limit to nervous system capacity.
Absolutely.
To have the attention on them, to allow an experience in. And so, you know, anyone listening to this, if you hear yourself in some of these little scenarios we're describing, like it's there's no shame, there's no blame in this. It's more to look with a critical lens at like what's actually going on. To your point, Marcia, like when I'm expressing that care, like the care unto itself is a really beautiful thing. What's going on beneath the surface that might warrant a different kind of care, different, you know, attention and focus somewhere else. Yeah. As we were speaking earlier, as you were sharing about that we can do something for
I want to add something here first before we switch gears. And that is that it is inherently vulnerable to be receiving this gift of someone's attention. It's not vulnerable because there's something wrong with you. It's the nature of it that is vulnerable. And so just don't beat yourself up because it's hard to enjoy something that someone's giving you. It's inherently vulnerable. Just the way it is. And we all have different comfort levels of what kinds of gifts we can receive and how big of gifts we can receive before it's overwhelming.
Thank you. That's a very important mention, and just the universality of how vulnerable it is to be perceived, to have someone's attention on you, to be seen, to be known, which I think is the most fundamental human longing. And just because we long for it doesn't always mean we're equipped to let it in as fully as we might want to. Marcia, were you gonna chime in with something?
No, I just couldn't hear anything because the guy's outside my window again. So I was like,
All good. I was going to take us back to what was coming up in my mind as an example when we were speaking about the fact, I'll call it the fact, that you can be engaged in the very same act for your pleasure and have a really different experience than if it's for another person's. And if you're shaping your whole idea about I like this, I don't like that based on only one of those, you're missing information. And so what feels to me like a very like the heteronormative trope I'm going to go with here, which is the woman giving oral sex to the man. You know, like, and someone deciding like, I don't like blowjobs. I don't like giving blowjobs because, you know, it's like, it's what he always wants, but what's in it for me is a very, very different experience than somebody who happens to be a woman loving, loving what goes on when she's got her mouth wrapped around a cock that she wants in there and having fun and playing. And I identify with the latter. I love sucking cock. My brother's probably listening to this one like, oh my God. And I remember this distinctly, particularly as a younger person, that it was like a very uncommon experience amongst my girlfriends. And I think a lot of that had to do with who is this actually for? You finding your own pleasure? Do you feel empowered? Do you have agency? Is it clear who this is for? Or are we operating in those shadows of consent where it's more coercive or extractive? For people who aren't necessarily familiar with the language of the Wheel of Consent, we'll definitely link to resources so that you can check all that out in the show notes. But I'm wondering, either of you, Betty or Marcia, like to talk a little bit about when we say consent, like what that actually means inside of those 4 quadrants and a little bit of what's outside, because I think that's what's really informing anyone's experience of being able to say, I like this, I don't like it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I came up as a sex educator. I got into this work because I was a sex educator. I came of age during the AIDS crisis. I was very involved with peer counseling and, you know, talking about like how to use condoms, got to use condoms, always condoms. Don't have sex or you'll die. And I didn't like the don't have sex or you'll die messaging. So I went with the, condoms. And, you know, it became really clear to me over the course of my career that the way we talk about consent in a sex education context has some really big embedded flaws in it that are pretty sexist and also pretty dehumanizing to everybody involved, not just to like some subset. And the main one is that there's sort of an idea that's unconscious that women have the sex and men are trying to get the sex. There's other sub assumptions like everyone's straight and there's only 2 people involved. Always
we'll stick with that little
heteronormative. And the man's job is to try to chase the woman and try to get sex, and the woman's job is to be correct in her choosing of yes and no. And if she chooses Prince Charming, everything, she lives happily ever after, great, no problem, everything's done and good. And if he stops chasing, something's wrong with him as a man. He's not allowed to have boundaries, limits, or other interests. And she's not allowed to have desires.
Wow, you just summed up what is wrong with our misogynistic patriarchal culture in one of the most succinct and powerful assessments I've ever heard. Well done.
That's what you get when you think about this stuff for 30 years. So I call this the gatekeeper model of consent, where she's the gatekeeper, he's trying to get through the gate, and the only thing she can do is lift the gate or not lift the gate. And the gatekeeper model of consent it's a permission slip. It's like, yes, you can do it. No, you can't. It's a one-time thing. And it is a not useless concept because there are certain limited circumstances that does apply to. You know, can I borrow your car? Yeah, you can borrow my car. Sure. That's a gatekeeper also. But when we're talking about self-expression, when we're talking about having fun, when we're talking about creating joy or whatever you want to do in the bedroom, not traumatizing each other even, just like if we're going to like drop the bar really low, that'd be a good start. we need to talk about agreement, not permission. And so consent, if we shift the model of consent from the gatekeeper model of consent to the agreement model of consent, now we both get to have desires and we both get to have limits and boundaries. And then we talk about what those things are, and then we come up with an agreement about how we want to play.
So I'm hearing that an agreement has more of a collaborative nature and is more dynamic as compared to that gatekeeper permission giving model of consent. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah. And when I hear people say, oh, consent's not hot, I think, well, yeah, because you probably think that it's about giving permission, which there's some context that's very hot in, but
I hear a lot of people say, like, it's consent's not hot because it's this idea that you then have to, like, can I do this? Is this okay? Do you want, like, that it becomes this.
It's a bunch of micro gates that you have to get through.
Really slow. And
that's not hot.
Either.
I agree with that. I think that's a terrible idea.
Micro gates.
So
that's good.
And then people are like, oh, agreements, that's so complicated. I'm like, is it? Kids do it all the time on the playground. Let's play tag. Okay, you be it. No, I don't want to be it. Okay, I'll be it. Great, we have an agreement.
You are really good with these quick examples. I love this. Yeah, like that's an agreement right there.
Yeah.
Done inside of 6 seconds, if that.
Yeah. Huh. I use that example in my book.
I was going to say, you read a book.
You read my book.
Both of your books will be in the show notes for sure, as they are on my bookcase.
Yeah. But the idea that it has to be hard and complicated, again, that goes back to the gatekeeper model, and it also goes back to this disembodiment that a lot of us feel, where it's hard to be like, oh, that sounds fun, because we can't feel it sometimes. Or, oh, I have an idea, because if you can't feel any of your desires, it becomes hard to create agreements. So it becomes easier to just be like, oh, whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. But that's not fun.
No.
Over the long run. And it doesn't, and Betty likes to say, there's no amount of giving that will ever get you what you want. Can't get what you want by giving. Mm-hmm. And giving, and giving, and giving, and giving. Betty, you want to take that one?
More about that for the people who, and I work with a lot of folks in this capacity who it's like, but I love giving. Mm-hmm. I love to make my partner happy.
Great. Then take turns, and then you'll have a turn in which you're giving, and then you'll have a different turn in which you're receiving. You get to do both.
Yeah.
Something you can, okay, correct me if this does not resonate for you, but what I often say is that there's a reason why in Wheel of Consent lingo, we don't actually use the terms giving and receiving so much as we use serve and accept, take and allow, because giving and receiving to me are two sides of the same coin, which means you're always doing both through a certain lens. And hear me out. I am giving you access to my body. I am giving you the chance to, to take your pleasure from me. Like that's a gift.
That's a gift.
I might then receive your affection, your attention. And so the way that I'm often explaining it to clients and students is like, we need that reciprocity and that turn taking to really create fulfilling experiences, because you can't have one without the other. And so if you're always the giver, your partner never has the opportunity, and you use the term self-expression before, Marcia, like we don't have the opportunities to fully express ourselves, nor do our partners. So it's an intrinsically limiting setup when you're doing it that way. And we're here for wholeness. So
I think, I said a little while ago that receiving is inherently vulnerable. And so I think a lot of times when people say, oh, I'm the giver, I like to give, it's very often just an avoidance of the vulnerability of receiving.
Yeah.
Also, I think we have to distinguish, and the wheel taught me this, the distinguish between one use of the word receive means it's coming towards me, it arrives at me. I can receive a caress, I can receive a compliment, I can receive a package in the mail, I can receive a pass to the 20-yard line. It just means it arrives. That's one use of the word. A different use of the word means it's something that I want. So back in the arriving use of the word, I might also receive a punch in the jaw or receive an insult. So I don't want that. So but it's arriving anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one use of the word receive. A different use of the word receive means I do want it. It's a gift for me, and it's for me, and I take it in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the gift I'm receiving might be something that you're doing for me, like scratching my back. Or it might be something that you are allowing me to do, like feel you up. Well, wait a minute. This receive means I want it and it's for me. And this receive means it's happening to me whether I want it or not. So what's going on with this word?
Right.
And it's a problematic word because it has two different very different meanings. Yeah. And so in my work, in the workshops, in my book, I never use give and receive to describe who is doing. I only use it to describe who it's for.
Got it.
And so, and that's just some getting used to. It doesn't mean that you can't use it that way, but yeah. I've learned that to make that distinction.
Yeah. There's the doer, yeah. The one who is active in some way. Yeah. There is the one who, I know this is not grammatically correct, but we say it all the time, the one being done to.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So technically speaking, you're on the receiving end of the touch of the activity or what have you. But
yeah, but I never use the word receive for that.
Right, because it doesn't answer the question of who it's for. It doesn't establish if it's truly consensual, if it's desired. And that's really where we want to go, is to understand the motivations and whether or not there is a mutuality of desire. Because if there's not, no consent.
Yeah.
And that's a piece that I think a lot of people in that more simplistic gatekeeping model of permission. Yes, I gave permission, and maybe it's a broader level of permission, but then something more narrow and specific starts to happen that doesn't quite fit. And that narrow and specific might be a vibe as much as it might be, a specific act that's going on. Like, or something shifts and this is no longer in keeping with what you said yes to. And that happens a lot, even I think in very innocent ways. And folks don't realize that they're then operating outside of the bounds of a truly consensual exchange in that moment. So I'm curious, anything you would offer to encourage people to become more clear about how consent is established and or what to do if you find yourself feeling a no to something you were a yes to? Or recognizing maybe you didn't say a very clear yes or no, and then like it's kind of the backpedaling moment, which is where a lot of people freeze and end up tolerating things they really don't want, or bolting out the door, or some action that ultimately.
I've been there. I have totally been there. Totally. And I imagine we all have. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of course we have. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, the thing I think we both would recommend is play the 3-minute game.
Play the 3-minute game.
Okay, tell people what the 3-minute game is, assuming they don't already know.
Two people, two or more people, but for now, just say 2 people, 2 questions. You take turns asking each other these 2 questions, and then you have a little conversation and you do the thing for 3 minutes. The 2 questions are, how would you like me to touch you for 3 minutes? And so if I'm asking Marcia, she's going to say, will you blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, oh, yeah, I could do that. That's one question. The second question, and you both had return doing that. The second question is, how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? That's a very different question. And for a lot of people, that can kind of throw them. But it is a very simple question. It's just unusual.
I noticed, I can't tell you how many times I've played the 3-minute game at this point. It's like, multiply hundreds of clients by a decade or whatever. And I noticed that in the way you phrase that, which I don't always use that language, and I will now, of how do you want to touch me? It's so provocative when we think about getting access to another person's body.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
And so if someone felt their own little like fluttery butterfly belly like I just did, it's like, what do we do? What do we do in these moments? How do we grow comfort, capacity? How do we normalize a culture, if you will, in our relationships where the presence of these questions and the answering of these questions like is something that is not going to give us the heebie-jeebies, but instead like we celebrate.
Yeah. I think the number one thing is to go slow with it. You know, I think because so many people come to this wanting better sex, they go, oh, great, full body, naked genitals, let's play. And then it's like, how do you want to touch me? And I'm like, too much input, too much.
Yeah.
There's too much happening. And make it a smaller canvas. Make it just your hand or just your foot or your thigh or whatever, your forearm. Make it a small canvas. And then take as long as you need to actually feel into an answer. Because part of the larger culture issues of why we don't get in touch with what we want is we think we're supposed to have an answer. And
Right now.
quickly, right now. I'm supposed to know so that we can do, because doing is the thing that's important, right? And that's not the case. With this practice, it is about taking the time to actually go, how do I want to touch? And I find it helpful even with that. If somebody asks me, and I've also been asked however many thousands of times, how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes at this point? I still go, what do my hands want? And I will like often look at my hands to see if I can feel into my hands, and then I can get an answer. Because if I go, how do I, Marcia, all of me thinking about who I've been and who I might be and what it could mean and all this, like that becomes very overwhelming. But if you, Darshana, are, saying, how do you want to touch me? And I go, oh, hey, hand, what's up? What do you want? I might be like, ooh, I want to play with Darshana's earrings.
These are
they look fun. And that becomes a lot easier to access something that feels actually true in the moment. And we have other practices to help you wake up your hands. But that's one of my go-tos, is to actually, when I'm on the receiving end of that question, to look at my hands and go, what do you guys want?
I love that. It's narrowing the focus, slowing
Making
down.
it smaller.
And then you didn't use this word, but I feel it so strongly. It's curiosity.
Yeah.
Right. Like then we get to be curious. What do these hands want? Like where is that kind of magnetic draw in the direction of, I wonder what this feels like. And I think that's another important piece for a lot of folks is the freeze that can come up when asked, like, what do you want? Like, because it feels so big.
So big.
Your description of like, strip naked on the bed, everything's in play. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Overwhelm. But the idea of creating little small sections of the body to explore or some kind of constraint or parameter around the experience ups the ease and also can really up the hotness in my experience. That when it's like, okay, you only get to touch my midsection, or like how creative can we be? I remember like in my early days of exploring more conscious sexuality and getting into this world, doing that for the very first time with a lover, where we were doing like an extended version of the 3-minute game, but like we would say like, it's only this body part. Like, so you got like, and it was so hot because it builds up all this anticipation. And then you want so much more, but no, that's not enough. So good.
Yeah.
Any other, like, let's put this under the heading of like basics and pointers for people who are, hearing this conversation and expanding their understanding of what consent can be. And also, I think most importantly, how it becomes a source of empowerment and how it becomes a way to deepen intimacy. Like, anything else you want folks to know?
Well, you've given us enough there in that last question to last about a week.
Right?
I will say that as far as the basics of the wheel, that when you have two people and you ask these two questions, what you end up with is 4 different rounds of the game. And this is, we call these the quadrants. And it's, I'm doing what I want, I'm doing what you want, you're doing what you want, and you are doing what I want. Mm-hmm. So that's the 4 different quadrants that we're describing.
Yeah. Which is so helpful to have that structure to lean into.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So again, we'll definitely be linking to the 3-minute game, to the wheel itself, to these things that we've been speaking about, so that whether or not you get to learn directly from any of us in real time, you can still have access to this amazing information. Any last thoughts? Again, like last share is about, for really, like I noticed myself wanting this conversation to steer toward the people who this might really be new to. In particular, let's say someone's listening and they're like, oh, I want to bring this to my partner. How? Especially if you're long-term and there's already like an established rhythm, and this might be a departure from that. Like, suggestions for how people can really take this and play with it and make it theirs.
Well, there's a lot of videos and resources on the School of Consent website and on the School of Consent YouTube channel, or I think it's Wheel of Consent on YouTube, but Google it, you'll find it. There's videos that'll show you how to do everything, how to play the games, how to play a 3-minute game, and you mentioned Bossy Massage earlier. That's out there too. But the main things I would say are, this is the bringing a game or a new practice to a relationship is also a consent conversation. It's an invitation. I want to do this. Would you also like to do this? And your partner may not know enough about it to opt in. So give them some information to go with on it. Like, and maybe tell them a little bit about why you want to, but also tell them a little bit about what you hope to get from it for the two of you. Make it a fun invitation, not a like, here's some homework. Highly recommend making it sound fun. And then the other thing is bring curiosity to it and expect it to go slow. I think a mistake that some people make, because they hear people who've played with the wheel talk about, oh my God, it changed my life. It's changed my life with my clients. It's changed my life with my relationships, my sex life, everything. People assume it's like, it's a one and done, and it's not. It's a practice. And so going into it with that mentality of like, oh, we're just going to see what's here today. And then tomorrow we'll see what's there. And then the next time we play, we'll see what's there. And then over time, that's when you can maybe start drawing some conclusions or seeing some patterns. But it's really about slowing down and noticing. And that curiosity piece is crucial to just not having foregone conclusions. And I think that really is the thing that I wish for people who are sort of finding this in the book or on the Betty's book also will walk you through it. But if you're finding this kind of out in the world and you're not taking a workshop or working with a practitioner, which are also options, a practitioner or a workshop, we will slow you down and bring your curiosity back and bring you back to noticing. And if you're on your own, you got to do that yourself. The curiosity and the noticing and the like, what's true now? What came up that time?
Yeah, I love that. The what's true now in particular, knowing that we are changeable creatures and things are shifting constantly. And so we get to stay curious. We get to learn more about what gives us pleasure in any given moment, have more balanced relating and deeper intimacy. These are some of the things that I've heard reflected here in your shares. Betty, anything that you want to tack on to that, or did that feel
what Marcia said?
Right?
That's it right there.
In a lot of instances.
We quote each other a lot.
Yeah, we do actually.
Makes really good sense. Well, I
Yeah.
so appreciate the chance to get to be in this conversation with you. As I said, the wheel of consent is the absolute bedrock of everything I do with my clients. And it has changed my life and many other people's as a result, just in my practice. And there are a lot of us out there who are giving credit to you, Betty, for having created this, Marcia
Thank
carrying
you.
the torch, and all the others who are as well. So it's a delight to be here, and everyone listening. As I said, links are going to be shared, links galore in the show
Thanks,
notes.
galore.
Anything you're curious about, I really encourage you to go scope it out, because this is truly life-changing stuff. Don't be fooled by the simplicity of it. Profound in the impact. And if you loved what you heard here today, I'd be incredibly grateful if you made sure that you were subscribed and left us a review. It helps us to make sure more people's ears find their way to these podcasts. And I will be back with you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.